We're going to take a look at a new decade for the CGC census count. We're into 1950. Superheroes are waning. Horror's coming. There are a couple of surprising books in the top 10. Let's break it all down. Up next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hello, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. And before we get started, please like, comment, subscribe, description, whatnot, Instagram, eBay, email, all that stuff. So we're going to go through the CGC census count of books cover dated 1950. We get all the data from CGC data. We look at the top 10 books, and then we take a look at a lot of other books, honorable mentions, classic books, big first appearances, expensive books, and the top book from each publisher, at least of the major publishers. I don't really bother with the ones that have 4 from the Canadian publisher that did reprints, that kind of thing. We're looking at kind of the major publishers, and there's always some interesting books there and some surprises. So I had started this video already and then realized I didn't hit record. So I'm starting all over again. So that being said, we are, interestingly, to make the top 10, it only took 106 issues to make the top 10, which is the lowest number for 10th place on the list since 1939. I think there's a combination of that there aren't as many books out there, that the books aren't as collectible as, not as they aren't as pricey as the books from the World War II era, certainly. And so not as many people are submitting them because, if a book is a mid-grade book is worth $100, you're probably not going to submit it. Whereas worth it, $1,500, you're definitely going to submit it. Okay. So I'm just going to jump into it because I'm already almost halfway through the list, and I have to start all over again because I didn't hit record because I guess I'm an idiot. So we're going to start at number 10 with Superman number 62. This is the only Superman book on the list. This is a cover by Wayne Boring and Stan Kay, and it features an appearance of Orson Welles, the classic writer, director, actor. And it does talk about the star of black magic in an astounding adventure with the Man of Steel. And this is, I guess, kind of a nod to the radio program that he did. What was it, 1939, 1940? Where he did a radio show which sounded like a news program that Martians had landed in New Jersey. And it caused quite an uproar. People believed it. And it ended up getting him a movie contract with RKO. And they basically gave him carte blanche to do anything. And he made Citizen Kane. Orson Welles, Citizen Kane is my all-time favorite film. And Orson Welles, I love his work. Some of his stuff is not as good, but is always interesting. And it's just, unfortunate that he didn't have the freedom to do what he wanted, but because Citizen Kane really reinvented movies. But I guess, is this his first appearance in comics? It could well be. Maybe there was a movie adaptation in 4-color or something, but I don't think so. So anyway, this particular book, as I said, only 106 copies on the census. Now, we're entering the 1950s. Things are changing. And here's where we start to see them changing. With number 9 on the list from EC Comics, Weird Fantasy number 13, which is the first issue of the series. It had been Moon Girl and Moon Girl Romance up through issue number 12. And then it became Weird Fantasy. So you have to be careful with a lot of these EC titles because there are duplicate numbers over the course of a few years because they restarted the numbering again with number 1 a little bit later on. But modern collectors should be used to that, as there are 11 volumes of The Punisher or something and all that sort of stuff. But at any rate, this particular book, Weird Fantasy number 13, EC is getting into the horror genre, the sci-fi genre, sci-fi/horror genre. They're not as graphic as they would be a few years later, as we'll notice there's several EC books we're going to see on the list. But this particular book has 115 blue label copies on the census. We really only deal with blue labels. The percentage of restored books, once you get out of the early 1940s is pretty low. So let's go to number 8 on the list. We're staying with EC Comics, and it's Tales from the Crypt, number 20. Just like with Weird Fantasy, even though this is number 20, this is the first issue of the series. It was formerly Crypt of Terror, Johnny Craig cover. And again, they're just kind of dabbling in the horror with the guy carving the tombstone. You know, we don't see decapitations and stranglings and, you know, acid baths and all that fun stuff that we would see in just the next few years. It's going to be interesting. I don't really preview the top. I don't know what the top 10 is for 1951 yet. I do that pretty much after I get done with this video. I start prepping the next one, so we'll explore it together. That's kind of the fun of this. So this particular book has 117 copies on the census. Let's get back to DC Comics, and Batman number 58 comes in at number 7 on the list. This is a Dick Sprang and Charles Paris cover featuring the Penguin and a whole bunch of birds, and I guess the state bird crimes. So you can see all the different states, the bluebird from New York and the cactus wren from Arizona. So yeah, I don't know. The Penguin was getting very popular at this time, and this comes in with a census count of 121. Moving on, we're not going to change much. Batman number 60 comes in with a Jim Mooney cover, a little campier cover on this one, sliding down the flagpoles. But listen, any double-digit Batman is going to be collectible. No key significance here. Census count of 122. Batman 61. This has a Win Mortimer cover, and this would be something we see in several Batman covers in this era, these kind of schematics on the blackboard behind them. This is the origin of Batplane 2. Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool cover. I like the detail of the lab, and they're making the model of the Batplane. That's kind of fun. This particular issue has a census count of 125. Let's stay with Batman and go to Batman number 56, where Batman and Robin are swashbuckling in South America. And this is a Dick Sprang and Charles Paris cover. Again, nothing really to set this apart from the others. All these Batman books are pretty similar. There's only these 4 in a row. There's only a 9 copy difference. This has 130 copies on the census. Now let's change gears. We're going to stay with DC, but it's not going to be maybe what you think, right? It's going to be Strange Adventures number 1 from DC Comics. And this cover of Destination Moon, a film that came out this year, and it looks like it was a preview. Like the DC worked with the studio to kind of preview the movie and get people out there. This title ran for with a little bit of a hiatus for 23 years and 244 issues, and saw the first appearance of Dead Man, the first appearance of Animal Man, among others. It was largely a sci-fi title for many years, a sci-fi anthology with no particular characters taking the lead. Lots of gorillas in the 60s on the covers of Strange Adventures. They would not really have a regular feature in the book until there's also the first appearance of the Enchantress. They didn't really have a regular feature. Animal Man was in there for a few, but I don't think it was consecutive. He kind of came and went. And then you did have that Dead Man run from, issues 205 through 216. And then Adam Strange was in there for a little while. And then, it became mostly reprints at the end of the run. But Strange Adventures number 1, this partial photo cover. And this is the start of a long-running DC series. Again, DC was changing gears at this point in time. And we have a total of 163 copies on the census. Now, number 2 surprised me. I did not expect this book to be up there at all. It kind of came from out of nowhere in terms of the publisher it came from. It's from Magazine Enterprises, and it is Ghost Rider number 1. This is the classic Western Ghost Rider, and I think Westerns were popular at the time. We're going to see other Westerns on the list from other publishers, but their popularity hasn't held up, except Ghost Rider. right? Because Marvel somehow got the rights to the character of Ghost Rider. And they had their Western Ghost Rider for several issues, who they later named Knight Rider. And then, of course, they used the name in Marvel Spotlight 5 for Johnny Blaze as the motorcycle rider who is possessed by a demon. He was based on Rex Fury. He appeared in Tim Holt number 11 in 1949, and then Marvel kind of used the same look of the character in 1967. And yeah, so I think the fact that the character's name and look was used by Marvel, and that has helped this particular book gain popularity over the years. I did actually have an opportunity. I didn't close the deal for like a file copy of this, which had different advertisements in it. It was like a proof, but they couldn't. There was paperwork from the publisher, and it was signed by. I think it was. I can't remember if it was Jerry Siegel or Joe Shuster. It was signed by one of them that was working for Magazine Enterprise at the time, saying, no, we don't have the rights to use this. You have to change the ads. So it was different than the actual ads in this book. It was crazy, but I couldn't close the deal on it. This one has the highest mean grade of all the books in the top 10 at 6.61. And there are 206 copies on the census. Now, when we go to number 1 on the list, we're going back to Batman. And we are going to Batman number 59. And this is a key. It's the first appearance of Deadshot Floyd Lawton. But it's the only appearance in the Golden Age. And it's a character that wouldn't come back until 1979, when Steve Englehart and Marshall Rogers resurrected him, changed the look. And here he was just like a guy with a top hat and a domino mask and a cape that shot guns. But then he became a very popular character over at DC, part of Suicide Squad. Had his own miniseries and was portrayed by Will Smith in the Suicide Squad movie. So yeah, it's a first appearance that people seek out, and it is, again, a double-digit Batman. This has the lowest mean grade of the top 10 books at 4.52. Now we're going to take a look at some other books, because I like to look at books that are popular books, that are notable keys, that are of high value, and the top book on the census from each publisher. So just missing the top 10 list at number 11 is the top book from Quality Comics. Quality was still plugging along here. They would for several more years before they were acquired by DC. Blackhawk was still going, Plastic Man, Doll Man. And this particular book, with this classic cover by Will Eisner, Spirit number 22, featuring the femme fatale Skinny Bones. Not the most alluring name of the Spirit femme fatales, but that is who she is. She's not quite as compelling as Dulcet Tone, or I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. They had these. He just had a lot of fun with the names. But this is a classic cover. This is a book that is very expensive, and the look was based on the actress Lauren Bacall, the then wife of Humphrey Bogart. And, they did several films together, like, Key Largo and others. But there are a total number of copies on the census of 103 of this particular book. Next on the list at number 12, just down one, is the top book from Dell. And that's Vacation Parade number 1, featuring Donald Duck with a Carl Buechner cover. This does have Carl Barks' work on the interior. Not one of his grand adventures. I think that just the fact that it's a number 1, it's a square-bound book, which means it's a little harder to get in high grade, because square-bounds tend to split fairly easily if they were read, especially, books that are 75 years old. And but nonetheless, this has 99 copies on the census. Up next, another number 1, characters that are still well-known today. From Archie Comics, their top book of 1950 in terms of books submitted to CGC, and that is Archie's Girls Betty and Veronica number 1. This cover by Bill Vigoda. Yeah, Bill Vigoda is the brother of Abe Vigoda. For my generation, he was known for playing Fish on the sitcom Barney Miller, and then its own spin-off. He was in Joe and the Volcano. His most iconic role, the one that will live forever, is Tessio in The Godfather, which, Abe Vigoda made when he was just 50 years old. And at any rate, Bill Vigoda, the Archie artist, is the brother of actor Abe Vigoda. And if you know Abe Vigoda, you know Abe Vigoda. Anyway, this is classic Archie from the 1950s, a genre that has become very popular lately with collectors. And what's notable about these early Archies, these early 1950 Archies, is Betty and Veronica, the big eyes. The big eyes, Betty and Veronica. It's a much different look than we would see like in the 60s and 70s. Even Archie also a goofier look with big buck teeth and what have you. So that is the top book from Archie Comics, and there are 95 copies on the census. From Fiction House, this is Planet Comics number 64. There's no cover artist credited on this. And this is, Fiction House kept on plugging right up until about this point in time. This was the, let me just see something. Was this the last issue? Oh, what's going on? Hold on a second. No. This is the last issue. It did continue till issue number 73 in 1953. But some of the characters, this is the last appearance, as it says here on the label. Last Futura, Lost World, and Star Pirate. But they were popular science fiction. And I think there are two types of Fiction House books: the good girl art, especially Sheena on Jumbo and Jungle and so on, and then the Sci-Fi Planet Comics, which also does have some good girl art as well. And there are 90 copies on the census. Top book from Avon. We're going to stick with science fiction in Strange Worlds #1 with a Jean Fawcett cover. I don't think as attractive a cover as certainly the Planet Comics or some other of the time. It does have a Joe Kubert interior art. I think we do see a Joe Kubert cover later in the list. But this particular book from Avon, just like the Planet Comics, again, we're in the sci-fi genre, 90 copies on the census. Coming in next is another EC Comics. This is Weird Science number 12, which is the first issue in the series, taking over from Saddle Romances. We have an Al Feldstein cover, and again, they were kind of dabbling their toes. You see this big trade dress, these wordy word balloons. We don't yet see the horrific stuff just yet. This particular book has 86 copies on the census, and interestingly, from the exact same month, and also I think Weird Fantasy 13 was from the same month, June 1940. This is Haunt of Fear number 15, which is the first issue of Haunt of Fear replacing Gunfighter, and it's also the first appearance of the Old Witch. And what's interesting about this, and you see this on most of it's on the Weird Science cover. It is on, let's see. It's not on the Tales of the Crypt, but it's on the Weird Fantasy. So the 3 books that came out this month all feature basically the same or similar box here where it says introducing a new trend in magazines, illustrated suspense stories, all one word. That would become a title of a book. Later on, this has 85 copies on the census. Going back to DC, a first appearance in Superboy number 10, first appearance of Lana Lang, the romantic interest of Clark Kent's Superboy. Much like Lois was trying to discover secret identity for years, Lana was doing the same thing. This has an Al Plastino cover. Lana Lang is still a character who's been portrayed many times in film and television, including most recently in the Superman and Lois TV series. She was a major player in that. 82 copies on the census. Let's go to our next book. And it is another EC Comics. This is from actually the very beginning of the year. This is December 49, January 50. It counts as 1950. It is Crime Patrol number 15, and it's the first appearance of the Crypt Keeper. So this is a pretty big key. This is one of the pricier books from 1950. Johnny Craig cover. Guys watching TV. That in the foreground is what we used to know as a rotary phone, kids. That's how we made phone calls back in the day. So Crime Patrol number 15, you can see they were kind of dabbling their toes into the horror pond. And then by mid-year, they would be kind of going full force. Canceling, a whole bunch of titles and replacing them with horror, sci-fi, fantasy, crime stuff. Now, speaking of horror, this particular book has 80 copies on the census. Another sci-fi book is the top book from Ziff Davis Publishing. It's Amazing Adventures #1. This painted cover by Robert Gibson and interior art by Wally Wood, Murphy Anderson, Ogden Whitney, and Alex Schomburg. There's also an atomic explosion panel. This particular book, #1 in the series, how long did this run? Amazing Adventures, not to be confused with the Marvel title that premiered with the first Furry Beast. This ran for only 6 issues back in the day. Only 6 issues from Ziff Davis of this particular book. And this particular one has a census count of 73. Up next, is another EC book from earlier in the year. This is War Against Crime number 11. It's the first EC horror cover, and it's the second appearance of the Vault Keeper. This is the last issue of the series. It becomes Vault of Horror after this. This is a Johnny Craig cover, and we can see, again, EC here. We have the big blocky trade dress at the top. This involves a mummy, which is more like a universal horror, not the, real life horror that we would see later on with decapitated heads and hangings and drownings and all that crazy stuff that we get when we really think of pre-code horror. This is the very beginning of pre-code horror as we think about it. I talked about earlier books, which are more crime books, which are kind of the precursors to pre-code horror that we saw in the mid to late 40s. It's, the EC brand is really beginning here, which influenced other publishers. This particular book, War Against Crime, has 72 copies on the census. Now we're going to stay with horror. Top book from Timely. This is a very interesting one. This is Captain America Comics number 75. It's the last issue in the series. Captain America's not in it. It's still entitled, I'm pretty sure from the indicia, Captain America Comics, but we can see the trade dress says in small font Captain America's, and then in larger font Weird Tales, The Thing in the Chest, monsters, horror, woman in the red dress being attacked. Covered by Gene Colan, who was a big part of Marvel Comics, did Daredevil, did Captain America, did the entire run of Tomb of Dracula. So he was well-versed in horror going way back to 22 years before he did the first issue of Tomb of Dracula. So this particular book, it's the last issue of Captain America Comics. Captain America's not in it, and we wouldn't see another issue of Captain America for 4 years. This has a census count of 68. Top book from Harvey Comics, Flash Gordon #1 with Alex Raymond art. He didn't do the cover. This is definitely not an Alex Raymond cover. I'm almost positive of that. And I don't know whether or not this is newspaper strips, but this particular book, Flash Gordon, a popular sci-fi character going back to the pulps from, I believe, 1929 is his first appearance in the pulps. And he had a long-running newspaper strip by Alex Raymond, a very respected, gorgeous artist of his day. Big influence on a lot of other artists. There are 65 copies on the census. Timely, Captain America's going away. They brought in another superhero, Marvel Boy. He'd only last about 6 issues. I think, 3 or 4 issues of Marvel Boy. Then it became Astonishing. He was in there for a couple issues, and then he disappeared until the 1970s. This cover's by Russ Heath. This is the origin of Marvel Boy. I believe it's his first appearance. Oh, no, his first appearance wasn't Daring Mystery Comics number 6 in 1940. Well, that was a different Marvel Boy. This the guy became... I'm so confused. There was a connection to Quasar. There was... Yeah, this is his first appearance. It would become astonishing with issue number 43, and then he was brought back in 1975 in Fantastic Four 164. Then he was brought back in 2006 for Agents of Atlas. So kind of a convoluted story with all the Marvel Boys and Quasars and all they're all kind of interconnected. Anyway, this is Marvel Boy number 1 from, they listed as Marvel Comics, even though the Captain America book was Timely Comics. This is the very end of the year. But they never really took the title Marvel Comics at the time. It was either it was changing from Timely to Atlas. But again, this is the first appearance and origin of Marvel Boy. And this particular book, like Flash Gordon, has a census count of 65. Let's go to the top book from Prize. This is Black Magic number 1, a horror book with a cover by Jack Kirby. Kirby was doing a whole bunch of different, with Joe Simon, a whole bunch of different genres. We'll see them elsewhere on this list this year. This is a rather popular pre-code horror title. It lasted just 12 issues from Prize. I'm sorry, it lasted more than 12 issues. It was one of those volume things. It had, 40 some odd issues over the course of 4 or 5 years, up until the 60s, early 60s. I didn't even realize that. But this is the first issue of Black Magic, Volume 1, Number 1, from Prize, and it has a census count. Yeah, till 1961. It has a census count of 63. Let's stay with horror. Why not? This is what it was in 1950. This is the top book from Ace Periodicals. It's Beyond number 1 with the werewolf cover. And again, this is from November 1950. And we'll see a lot of the other publishers are jumping into the latter part of the year. The Black Magic book was from October, November 1950. This is November 1950. So EC was kind of starting the beginning of the year, going more full force mid-year. And this is how quickly things were changing, right? A lot of different publishers were jumping into horror. And this particular book, Beyond number 1, has a census count of 57. That ties it with Youthful Magazine's Captain Science. There's a Destination Moon text article. This is a cover by Walter Johnson. I believe that's different than the Washington Senators Hall of Fame pitcher. But there's Wally-Wood art on the interior. Again, this Sci-Fi. We're not talking about horror. We're talking about Sci-Fi a lot on this list. And this is from Youthful, also 57 copies on the census. The first TV comic book from Dell, Howdy Doody number 1. It was based on the NBC TV series. He was a puppet with freckles. I don't know. They rebooted Howdy Doody when I was a kid, and I maybe I just wasn't young enough. I really wasn't interested. But he was quite the sensation in 1950 on TV, and this is the first TV comic book. Photo front and back cover. Howdy Doody number 1 has a census count of 54. Now, the top book from Fawcett. Is it Captain Marvel? No. Is it Marvel Family? No. Any of those? It is Jackie Robinson, no number. They did a few other Jackie Robinson books. This is the first one. It is a photo cover, the life story of the famous Brooklyn Dodger. And one of the things about Jackie Robinson, tremendous athlete, obviously a pioneer, an American hero, broke the color barrier in the traditional major leagues at the time in 1947. Collectible book. What most people don't realize, 2 things about him. He was like a 4-sport athlete. When he was at UCLA, he did football, baseball, basketball, and track and field. He was an NCAA long jump champion. His older brother was a silver medalist in the 36 Olympics at 200 meters behind Jesse Owens. And here's the thing, is, in my opinion, for several years, like in the very early 1950s, I think Jackie Robinson was the best player in baseball. Like, if you look at advanced analytics, if you're all into baseball and look at WAR over a 3-year period, a 5-year period, he was best player in baseball from maybe about 48 to 53. somewhere in there. As Musial and Williams got older and Mays and Mantle were still young, he was amazing. People don't realize how great a ball player he was. Just based on his playing record, he's a definite Hall of Famer, one of the all-time greats. But anyway, that Fawcett book has a total of 53 copies on the census. How about Star Comics? Star Publications. It is Blue Bolt 106 with an L.B. Cole cover. We've talked about, and it's kind of phasing out, right? The Schomburg, Cole, Baker era is still popular, but their books are you're seeing fewer and fewer copies of them at this point in time. They're getting they're on much more marginal books. You're seeing more of the horror covers become popular, right? So we're going to see like Johnny Craig and Lee Elias and Bernard Bailey, their covers being popular, but still, anytime you can get L.B. Cole, it's going to be popular. And we can see science fiction here. Again, L.B. Cole, very strong primary colors on his covers. 52 copies on the census. Another book, this has a Bob Montana cover. This is an Archie #1, and I put this because it has a average grade on the census of just 3.86. It's Archie Annual #1. Part of the reason is it's 116 pages. It's a really thick book. So, I mean, it's very hard to get in any high grade just because of the spine splits. First edition, it's, just a big, a #1 for an Archie is very popular among collectors. We talked about Archie with the big buck teeth. Like, they drew him like he just had two giant teeth, like he was a gopher. But he did have the checkered pattern in his hair. At any rate, this has 51 copies on the census. Let's go to Nationwide Publications, 1950. This is Captain Atom #1, the first appearance of Captain Atom, not to be confused with the character that we would see, is it 9 years later? 9 or 11, I forget, from Charlton. Yeah, he's a sci-fi character who liked to wear shorts. So, The Adventures of Captain Atom. I don't really know a lot about this book. I don't know. Look at the slab. I think it's a smaller book. I don't think this is something that's bigger than a comic in a magazine slab. I think this is just a tiny book. There are 48 copies on the census. From DC Comics, we talked about those schematics. This is schematics for the Batmobile of 1950, right? Batman and Robin building with the blackboard with the blueprint in the background. This is a very collectible book. I think that cover art, just like Batman fans love it. This particular book, it's a Dick Sprang cover, has a total of 47 copies on the census. That's going to tie it with another Blue Bolt. This is Blue Bolt 105, another L.B. Cole science fiction cover. This I think is a better cover. I love the colors really pop. You have this green sorceress space woman. And Blue Bolt is actually a character on the cover. Wasn't always the case in Blue Bolt magazines. Like, he kind of came and went, and it was largely an anthology. But Blue Bolt 105, also 47 copies on the census. Let's keep on going. Up next, another Western. We saw #1 from the previous year. This is the top from Toby Press. It's John Wayne Adventure Comics #2 with a photo cover. Frank Frazetta, Al Williamson, and Gil Kane art. That's pretty cool to get those three guys in the same issue. John Wayne, of course, a big movie star at the time, an Academy Award winner for True Grit in 1969. And these John Wayne Adventure Comics alternated kind of between Westerns and war comics, just like his movies kind of did. So this has 42 copies on the census. Next, this is an interesting one. This is from Catechetical Guild. This is Blood is the Harvest, which seems to be very much warning us of the dangers of communism once again. So you see this guy in the Red Army about to shoot these poor peasants that are blindfolded. The Catechetical Guild was very strong anti-communist propaganda that they put out in the 1960s. They did another book that is quite popular about the dangers of communism rearing its head in America. This is 1950, the height of McCarthyism. So this particular book, 41 copies on the census. How about a first appearance, a #1 book from DC? It is The Adventures of Bob Hope #1. A photo cover with Bob. I'm not sure of the movie. It's I can't remember the name of the movie. But this Bob Hope, Adventures of Bob Hope ran for, how many issues did that run for? 100 and change? Adventures of Bob Hope. It ran for 109 issues until 1968. Again, a big movie star at the time. Never won an Academy Award, but for many years hosted it. And was disappointed they didn't win. As he said, welcome to the Academy Awards, or as it's known in my house, pass over. Bob Hope also made contributions by doing USO tours during World War II through the Vietnam War. And so it was a very important entertainer at the time. Fun fact, from what I understand, family legend, that when my uncle went to law school, his roommate was Bob Hope's son. And the one-liner that I got out of that story years ago was that Bob Hope would write letters to his son and say, keep your nose to the grindstone, but not too much or it'll look like mine. He had like a very famous ski slope nose, if you're not familiar with Bob Hope. If you are, you probably think that's hilarious. Or maybe not. There are a total of 40 copies of The Adventures of Bob Hope, #1 on the census. Classics Illustrated. This is the top from Gilberton. This is an interesting one. It's the only edition, which might make it more popular. People aren't really submitting Classics Illustrated a lot. Alex Bloom cover. It's The Black Tulip by Alexander Dumas. I don't know. I'm not there. There are some Classics Illustrated that were found. I don't even know if this has a lot of value. Classics Illustrated #73. We don't talk about value on this, but you see, there's a lot of Classics Illustrated out there, and nobody wants them, for the most part. No, there were other HRNs. This is the regular one from 19. And I'm looking at cover price real quick. Yeah, a 5.5 sold for $25 in 2023. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm looking at, no, I don't think so. I think that's the first, I'm just looking real quick here. I have a hard time keeping track of the numbers for Classics Illustrated. Anyway, this has a census count of 39. And also, with the census count of 39, the top book from St. John Publications. This is Son of Sinbad, #1. Bondage cover. It's the only issue in the title, and it's a cover by Joe Kubert. He also did the interior art. St. John, I don't know anything about this, but it's the only issue, and there are 39 copies on the census. We said we'd get back to Simon and Kirby, and here we are from Harvey Publications. It's Boys Ranch #1. Kind of that motif that they would use over and over again, like in, the Newsboy Legion, the Boy Commandos, and so on and so forth. What was the other one they did? They did a couple of other ones, and then they did Boys Ranch. The Kid Cowboys of Boys Ranch. Simon and Kirby cover, census count of 31. Feature presentation. This is the top one from Fox. Fox is disappearing, right? We're done with Blue Beetle and Phantom Lady. We are with feature presentation #5. The Black Tarantula. This is the only issue. It becomes feature presentation magazine. A little bit of a horror-esque cover. There are 26 copies on the census. From Eastern Color. Now, this is interesting. This is the top book from Eastern Color. It is Famous Funnies #191. And it's the beginning of Barney Carr Space Detective. Famous Funnies had funnies. Like, just kind of funny animals or, goofy little humor strips going into science fiction. We'll see over the next couple of years. I think we're going to see a bump in the Famous Funnies cover counts. There are just 24 of these on the census. Top book from American Comics Group is Adventures into the Unknown #9. I think this is the third straight year that an Adventures into the Unknown book gets the top one. There is, and I didn't know this, a one-page E. Nelson Birdwell Bridwell. E. Nelson Bridwell text story. He did a lot of writing for DC in the 70s. I didn't realize he had been around that long. This is an Edvard Moritz cover. Got a little bit of a horror theme there. And this has a census count of 23. From St. John's, this is Giant Comics Editions 15. It's a 128-pager Matt Baker cover. That's going to get the collectors in. And these Matt Baker romance books are really hard to find. This has a mean grade on the census of 3.78 and a count of just 19 books on the census. From Standard Comics, it's Thrilling Comics number 75, Alex Schomburg cover. Again, this doesn't look like Schomburg of World War II. It's not airbrushed like it was post-World War II. It is more minimalist, just 2 characters on the cover. It's a Western, and there are just 15 copies on the census. Up next, the top book from Trojan magazines. This is Crime Smashers number 1. This does have popularity because it was used in Sodi, Seduction of the Innocent. This is one of the only true crime books we see here. They're kind of getting replaced by just more straight horror. Census count of just 14. From Pines, also with a census count of 14, is Dear Beatrice Fairfax number 5 with an Alex Schomburg cover. And it's fully signed on the bottom left there, Alex Schomburg, a romance book. Really interesting Schomburg cover. Dear Beatrice Fairfax number 5. Never heard of it, but we can see they're getting Baker and Schomburg to do some of these romance books. Baker more so than Schomburg, but I guess that is airbrushed cover. So this also 14 copies on the census. The top book from Hillman periodicals. It is not Airboy. It is Pirates Comics number 1. It's just a comic about pirates. I guess pirates were somewhat popular still in the 1950s. They were making some pirate movies at the time. This also 14 copies on the census. The top book from Lev Gleason is another issue of Crime Does Not Pay, issue number 92. This one is a painted cover by Bob Fujitani. Not Charles Bureau. And there are just 13 copies on the census. And one more book. Oh, no, a couple more books to talk about. We have Teenage Romances number 12. This is a Matt Baker cover. And I have to double check my notes because I'm now all over the place. This has just 12 copies on the census. Again, these Matt Baker romance books are really hard to find. And then with just 7 copies on the census, this is the top book from the United Features Syndicate. This is Tip Topper number 3. Ernie Bushmuller cover of Fritzy Ritz. I guess it's a good girl cover. I don't know. But that's going to end the list for 1950. Let me know what you think of the list. Do you have any books? I know the people that watch these videos enjoy it. I enjoy making them. We'll be back next year with 1951. It'll be interesting to see how the dynamics change in terms of the number of books that have been submitted to CGC. So, again, thanks for stopping by. Let me know what you think in the comments below. That definitely helps the algorithm, kind of pushes it, lets more people see this. If you've just jumped in and only seen a few of these, we have a whole slate of these going back to pre-1935. And we're going to be continuing all the way up through 2025. Because by the time, I still have 75 years to go, and we'll be in probably mid-2026 by the time we get to 2025. And then we'll be done. So anyway, I'd like to thank you all for stopping by. You can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying until next time, enjoy your comics.